What's up, guys? Welcome to another video of DevTalks with your host Traven, where we talk about everything engineering technology wise. In this video, what is the best way to learn how to program or code? However you define it, there is a difference, whether you like it or not. But without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and let's dive into this.
Incredible thing where you tried a bunch of different programming languages when you stream. You have like you go all out on certain programming languages like Rust and then Go and then trying to pick a new one, but also are like experimenting constantly. So maybe one question I could ask is about learning. What's your approach to learning a new programming language? And maybe what's your advice on learning a new programming language when you begin that journey?
So I've kind of done a bunch of different ways to go through this learning process, and I've tried a lot of different ones. Something that is obviously successful is just start building something. Just put your hands on the keyboard. Like, especially if you already know how to program, you're like, okay, I'm now using Zig. How do I do a main function so I can just run the program? Okay, now I know how to build. Okay, how do I do an if statement? What does it look like? Okay, how do I declare my own functions? How do I do modules, right? You just kind of like Google your way through it, if you will, to get to the end product and build something. It's a great way to do things because I find that repetition, like rote learning, is obviously the best way to do this. You have to kind of go over it a bunch, and you can definitely get out and build a lot of stuff with that. And I like that initial kind of get used to things, but on top of it, I find that by doing that, you also fall into like traps. You kind of Google and you try to solve a problem in the language based on all of your previous experience, and so you don't have what makes that language special. You kind of have what all the other languages make special. And so you end up kind of not really being able to use it very effectively, but you can certainly kind of learn it and get kind of good at it. And so the second approach I've been doing lately, and this has been inspired by the creator of Ghosty, Mitchell Hashimoto, is to just start by reading the language reference, the whole thing. And so lately I've been just kind of going through and just reading the entire manual for these languages. Like Zig, I'm almost done with that one. It's like 8 to 10 hours of just sitting down, reading, and I'll whip out my computer and kind of practice a couple of the things from the actual docs. And that way I can learn all the things. So then when I start building again, I remember, okay, I know there's a thing over here. Let me go reread about it because now I have it indexed in my brain somewhere that will kind of remember. And so I don't think there's like a right or wrong way. I mean, at the end of the day, the right way is always that you have to build something eventually. You cannot just.
I like him. I did a video a while ago on the same interview, but it was a different part of programming and things and that. And I think it went really well, but I wasn't home, so like audio was kind of messed up, but still was a great video. But the thing I want to say is the first point he gave, that is probably the best way, and that's the best way for me because you're not going to learn nothing by just reading and sitting on your hands. Like you might get the idea, but you don't know how to apply it. Application is the best way to learn, I think, in every scenario, by just doing it. For me, doing it was always the best way. Whenever I got fed to the wolves in a project or given a project to do and stuff like that, getting thrown into there helps you learn so much because you're forced to apply, and the application process of building is what helps you to learn and maintain it because you've done this before. So now you can recreate it a bunch of times, and now when you get to a repetitive function, now you sit there as an engineer. I would hope most engineers do it in this way, where you sit there and you're like, how can I make this more better and efficient? And then you find a way to do that, and then you just get better and better and better at it as time goes on, and the more you do it and stuff. The second thing, the language reference, I'm about to actually steal that from him. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't think of it of looking for those reference pages and going through that kind of reading sense. I might start doing that as well too. Add it to my reading. As if you guys don't know, if check out my main channel, I'm starting a book series where I review books, I give my honest takes and stuff on it, and I read a lot of nonfiction stuff. But I might add that to that because I want to become better at programming in other languages or more proficient in ones that I know. So why not go out there and spend the extra time to make myself better and more intelligent in those aspects? That I completely agree with. I'm gonna rewind a few more seconds just so we can pick up on this next point he's about to say. But I completely agree with those two aspects, and the second one I'm gonna try it myself some to come back later and see if how much it works or it benefits.
Indexed in my brain somewhere that will kind of remember. And so I don't think there's like a right or wrong way. I mean, at the end of the day, the right way is always that you have to build something eventually. You cannot just read about it. You have to put your hands on the keyboard. You have to build something out. And then once you do that, that's where you really discover what makes it painful or what makes it great. And if you don't have the breadth of what the language offers, you just may make it painful by simply being bad at it.
What exactly are you reading? Like this, like what
language
like,
reference.
The language reference.
So it just goes through like every
that's a
feature
lot.
top to bottom, right?
Yeah.
And every way it's described, all the different things. Like I think Ziggs is, it's a decent size, but it's not just simply read the words. You want to internalize each concept as well. So it takes a long time. So I'm a slow reader.
So you're like building in AI terms like a background model, like of just because I don't think you can just start building once you're done reading because you probably forgot.
Yeah.
How to do a for loop. Like you kind of forget.
This is why he said when he got to certain concepts, he would play around and code those specific concepts in the reading so that he would get more familiar with what that actually was and how to use it. And because you can't just sit there and read and you're going to forget. Even if you're very proficient at something, if you go and do something else for a while and you come back, you might forget certain things, but pick it up. Some syntaxes are kind of the same between language to language. It's just the way that you write it out. I mean, structure would be the same, but the syntax might be slightly different per language on what's going on in things, which is very important as well too when it comes to picking up new programming languages and learning on that aspect.
Get the specifics. You just are building up the design choices, the set of features available, what are the strengths and weaknesses, all that kind of stuff. And then you start building. That's really interesting. Probably not the thing you would recommend to a junior developer, somebody who's just starting out at first.
If you don't know what an if statement is, that's not a good way to learn. Like to me, the best way to learn then is really hands on the keyboard and building extremely simple things and slowly growing in complexity. Because understanding what a class and methods and instances versus the blueprint, which is the class, versus functions versus modules versus all that stuff, right? Like that just takes time to learn. And so that's a completely different style of learning.
I wonder, because for me, learning right now, AI is a huge help, but I already have a lot of experience. I wonder if you're starting from scratch, whether that's a good idea, but I still think it's probably a really good idea. But basically, generate some code using AI and figure out what it's doing by playing with different parts. Maybe can you comment on that aspect, like the use of AI as part of the learning process?
This is where I have both the hopeful and the doomer take at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with Google or Stack Overflow. Like this, it's all the same kind of take, which is it's just making things more democratized in some sense. I get to ask questions in probably the most personal possible way with my own voice and my own words, and it's able to produce out answers and kind of hopefully help guide me. Now, regardless of just say the errors and the incorrectnesses of it, like ultimately just using it as a learning, tool and being able to just, formulate and read answers in your own voice, I think is super powerful. And I think it's super amazing. But the part that I think is going to be really difficult is that we don't value remembering things anymore as a society. Like since the internet came about, I can just look that up. No need to you don't need to memorize your times tables, right? You can just use your calculator. You can just do all that. I remember I just was sitting on the airplane and I watched someone do the world's most simple addition and subtraction 10 times on their phone. I'm like, why are you not just you should already know these, you should be able to do these things. And I realized that we kind of offload our brains, right? Oh, I don't need to know these things because I can look them up. And that's not a bad answer in some sense. I can understand that. I don't need to remember every last thing. But then it also makes me realize that you kind of develop this learned helplessness, that a new error comes up. I'll just ask the AI. AI says, oh, okay, I got to fix this line. I fixed the line. You didn't actually learn anything. You kind of just used it as a quick means to get something out and move on. And so you sacrifice knowledge for speed, which is
So I agree with him mostly here. I would say about 95% I would agree with him. To a certain aspect of offloading your brains and being so reliant on the internet and AI now to just give you the answers so you don't have to know it. I always tell people now when they ask me about AI and using technology and how we are going to leverage AI And especially with coding, I always say just because you use it doesn't mean you know what's going on or you know that it's giving you the right output and stuff. There are certain fundamentals that you absolutely need to understand to know that you are getting what you are trying to receive and going off from that. That is my strong belief on that. So when he says that, this is a really smart guy. It's the Prime Mageddon. I guess that's his name if anybody's looking for him. But this is Lex Friedman's interview, and I like referencing it because they talk about a lot of scientific stuff on here. But the part that I don't agree with though, the 5%, would be that part of looking up a specific error to kind of give you some ideas of what can be wrong and how you can possibly fix it. Because, and not knowing and not learning from that. I think, in my own opinion, if you are able to debug an error and look at other cases on how this can possibly be wrong and why you're getting this particular error and what reasons, and you're going back and forth and reflecting, and once when you solve it, I think it's actually a good thing as far as learning, because you are still debugging it in a sense. You are, even if somewhere you find the answer somewhere, hey, if this happens, I know now for the long run this isn't there. Unless you're completely just so offloaded and relying on the internet, then that is something else entirely. But no, I wouldn't. I would not. I wouldn't say that fully diminishes the learning aspect of it, because even earlier he said, like, hey, how would I write an if statement in here, and then how would I do the models and everything like that, so and so on and going on and on and on. From there, how would you do all these things? So, but overall, I do agree in that aspect. There.
Great thing in some, like, we have to make those trade-offs all the time in engineering. Sometimes you have to move fast at the sacrifice of knowledge, and I'm totally on board for that. But I worry that what we'll create is an entire generation of incompetent programmers who can do some amount of things well, but anything that is unique, bespoke, or requires some extra, like, little elbow grease might become very difficult. It might cause a whole chasm where juniors remain juniors forever. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to see that. I want to see people grow. I want to see people, actually be able to take this as a craftsmanship thing. And so that's kind of that's like both my hope and my worry is that AI, I think, can do both, really. Because if you could ask whatever question you want and you don't have to rely on, say, a book to give you that exact answer, and if the book just said it wrong and you can't understand it, it's just like, sorry, you don't get to learn what this is. Like recursion for me. I spent way too much time until someone gave me the right problem to understand recursion. You could imagine AI could have solved that for me way faster, because it could have gave me the right problem and walked me through it much better. But what happens if I just always have recursion solved by them and not actually learn it myself?
So if I ask AI to generate code to do a certain thing, some actually large percentage of time.
I actually get what he's saying now. He's saying don't ask for the literal answer, ask it to teach you how to solve the answers. And it will break it down further and still give you the answer at the same time, which is smart. That's a big one right there.
Most of what AI generates is going to be correct for me. But some percent of the time, it's not, like fundamentally not. Mm-hmm. And for me to recognize the difference between those two, I think it takes a lot of experience. Like, I think to learn that skill of knowing, like, no, a different, new, out-of-the-box solution is needed here than the one you're providing. You're missing the point. That's a skill. And how do you learn that? You learn that by building from scratch. So both are probably really necessary.
Yeah.
But I think as a first step of learning how to program, it's pretty nice to generate a function, to generate for loops and all that kind of stuff, and then just fuck with the different lines and like modify them to try to adjust the behavior of the program. And from the way the behavior of the program adjusts or bugs are created, you learn about the syntax of the language, the behavior of the language, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a super powerful way to learn. But yeah, you need to also write from scratch.
Yeah, at some point you have to take off the training wheels, because I think what you're really spotting is the difference between reading and writing code. Like, I can read a lot of languages very well. I can see what's happening. I can understand it. But, like, I would not be very good at writing it. I can understand a lot of things about C++ and I can read it, but I'm just not that, because I just don't, I haven't done it in so long. I can't remember all where all the semicolons and colons and like, you do public and private and how you should you naming convention, like, all those things kind of add all together. And then you're just like, oh, I'm really bad at writing it, though I can read it. And so there's a skill gap chasm that exists between those two.
And yeah, I actually that even that last point. Oh my gosh, like he's actually amazing. That whole thing of being able to read code and not being able to write it to an aspect, code is always more easier to read. Overall, it's just so much easier to read overall. There's nothing that I can put against that to say that that's not true. For me, it's very easy for me to break down topics and things and understand what I'm looking at. And then if you don't know how to apply it yet though, that's what's going to hurt you because once you don't fully understand it, like you can't come up with it in your own brain. You can like it's like sometimes like where I also learn a bunch of languages and stuff like that, right? I can understand somebody speaking to me, but if I was to try to speak that same thing back to them, I wouldn't be able to until get more comfortable with speaking it and speaking that language more and stuff and actually putting it into application and using these words in the right contexts and ways, then I know I can speak it back. And that's kind of the same thing with programming in a sense. And don't leave this topic to only be for like coding or learning a program language. This is the same aspect for everything to learn. Like even when I read books, I read a lot of nonfiction books and I want to apply them to my lives. Yeah, I can read it and I can take notes on it and stuff. The notes help me retain what I'm actually reading, what's the most important stuff about the chapters and sections that I'm reading about. But how can I apply now what I'm reading to real life? And then is that making my life better? Is it actually working and going on and on and on and on from that? But without further ado, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'm actually really interested about this aspect. All the engineers, let me know what you guys think. Will this help? Have you ever used any of those techniques that he said? And do you agree about this whole learning aspect, especially about using AI and everything? You can use it for so much stuff. Like, don't tie it down to just programming. If you see this and you're not even an engineer in a sense, see how you can take this knowledge and break it down into other aspects of your life. If you need help, ask. That's all I can say. But without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. I really appreciate you all. If you want to send me any recommendations, send me an email at devtalkspod@gmail.com. Also will be in the description down below. Without further ado, peace. See y'all next time.